most people, instead of looking at the person's algorithm and how it's changing, try to figure out what the platform is doing and what are they promoting, which is important, but it's only part of the story.
Hi, Sid. So, number 3 in our series. We've obviously covered who and why. And now we're going to discuss where. So we know who we're targeting. We know why they should be listening to us. Now, where are we going to talk to them? So let's kick that off with, I suppose, platforms are the obvious place to start. So what platforms should you prefer using, or what platforms?
It's really interesting, Nick, because I know that you're very strong with your events background, and most people don't really understand that events themselves are a platform. Because a lot of times people conflate the term platform with social media, and actually that's not the case. So you can look at physical platforms like the Rotary Club of East London or whatever it may be, and the digital platforms, which can be Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And it's really weird that most people don't understand the fact that there are physical as well as digital platforms, and they're linked to each other. And your customer persona, or the customer that you're talking to, is going through a series of platforms. Everywhere you go, you're on a platform, essentially.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I suppose in old language, we would have called them sort of different marketing vehicles.
Exactly.
But effectively, push vehicles and other platforms. So when you look at them, the thing you always hear is, you've got to understand the algorithms. So, how should you look at those algorithms? What should you do to make sure you're ahead of the game?
No, it's really interesting. Like I am always experimenting on, let's say, LinkedIn. And one of the things that I've tried experimenting this week was to try and repost somebody else's content and add a little bit of blurb on top. And I was comparing that with my own original posts, which were happening till now. And I was trying to figure out what's working with the algorithm. And I think that this is a truth or dare test that we need to continuously do, because the answers that we get right now are not the answers that we'll get tomorrow or next week or something like that. So whatever the results of my experiment are going to be, I can be sure that those results are not going to be repeatable 3 months later. And that's for a specific reason. And most people don't really understand that reason. They think that, the platform's out to get me. But to be honest, if I ask you, so when were you on Facebook first? What will you say? So you'll say, okay, I was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever. And I said, would you be vaguely embarrassed about the kind of shit that you posted on Facebook then? And say, yes, I would be. So the fact is that you have evolved as a person. So actually, your algorithm has changed. Yeah. And most people, instead of looking at the person's algorithm and how it's changing, try to figure out what the platform is doing and what are they promoting, which is important, but it's only part of the story. So I think when we're looking at algorithms, we should look at both sides of the story. One is the platform, and second is the person, and probably the person wins out, because unless and until the platform serves the evolving person, it's going to fail.
It's all about people. Everything's about people and their behaviors. And I suppose the emerging trend, not emerging, it's literally just washed all over us. Influencers, they're absolutely everywhere. So if you're a brand, how would you interact with those influencers? How would you manage those as part of the broader context of trying to build your community?
Yeah, no, before even I get into influencers, and I've got a special story on that one, if I look at platforms themselves, platforms are brands. And most people don't think of platforms as brands, but platforms are brands. So LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, they're all trying to promote a certain kind of content that rubs off on them and kind of states their position in the world. So it's quite likely that we need to understand what that automatic filter is, what that tribe is that is inhabiting that platform. I think that is literally coming at it from a platform as a brand perspective, to the table. So once we understand these two things, then let's talk about influencers. Now, I have my brats, my idiot kids have, surpassed our expectations and have become massive influencers. So they've got over million followers on YouTube and close to 4 million on TikTok, and the rest of it is crazy. Then the fact is that it's an interesting situation for me to actually observe what's going on, because I was like, why? What in the world are they doing that is making people follow them?
Yeah.
And times most marketers are categorizing influencers in the wrong way, I think. Like, for example, they're categorizing people into nano influencers and micro influencers and macro influencers and celebrities, with the number of followers that they have. But I think a more useful way of looking at it is qualitative. Because if I look from a qualitative perspective, I'm looking at either you're a celeb like Will Smith, who's now on Instagram, so you're an Instagram influencer. Before you slap Chris Rock, of course. But then, yeah. The second is if you are a domain expert or a subject matter expert, like you're a chef, like Gordon Ramsay or whatever. You're a chef. You're an unknown chef, maybe not Gordon Ramsay, but unknown. So then you have subject matter expertise. And the third is you are a natural born storyteller. So, and that's where I think my kids fall in. They're natural born storytellers. Because if I look at what natural born storytelling does, is that it's like the Pied Piper, the whole story of the Pied Piper. Because if I have to look at it from an evolutionary biology perspective, I think influencers are leaders, because every tribe requires a leader, and that's kind of ingrained in us. And we don't realize it. So we are always gravitating towards, and we used to for celebrities first, but now we're gravitating towards influencers because they are tastemakers. They're determining what we're doing. So I think from a influencer perspective, I think a business will be better served to understand which brand values is this influencer connecting to.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really useful.
I think,
in fact, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think when you sort of say about storytelling and those influencers being so important, I think it's because we've now become so used to just doom scrolling, even on LinkedIn. You're not going there. A lot of time people don't go there for a set purpose. It's just to keep in the know. And we're almost like magpies looking for that shiny thing, that thing that's going to engage us. And actually, stories always engage us. That will never change. Films haven't become any less popular. If anything, the art of storytelling now has become even more important. And that's why films are now, rather than being a film, you'll have a mini series of 6 episodes, so they can really dive deep into the story. So I think storytelling is absolutely key to getting the eyeballs on your brand.
Yeah, and if I look at the influencers in storytelling, then you need to really figure out who are my leaders who can tell the story convincingly. Do I need to borrow them from someplace, or can I create them in-house, or is it a combination of both? Because the medium is the message sometimes, because they're believing metadata and then people believe data. So what I mean is that I don't think data is very compelling. A lot of these startup founders that I love so much because they're bringing up so much of innovation, they don't know exactly how to communicate all the data, all the stuff that they've got into a compelling story. And that's a shame.
So going back to sort of the influencers, do you feel that any campaign should involve an influencer campaign as part of their overall strategy, or are there certain ways that you should approach influencers? Do you think there's so much possibility there that it deserves its own attention in its own sort of silo within the overall plan?
Well, I think it does deserve its own attention nowadays, especially with the fragmentation of media and with the rise of influencers and with the following of celebrities and the way in which we're dealing with things, certainly. And obviously, you're connecting AI with it. So for all this bunch of reasons, I think we should be looking at influencers very strongly. I also think that when we're trying to build stories, we should be looking at what are the kind of stories that the influencer is already telling. Because a lot of times I've seen brands do the stupid mistake of trying to get the influencer to tell the brand story instead of actually doing it the other way around, trying to figure out what stories the influencer is telling and how can the brand incorporate itself in that story.
Yeah, because obviously that influence has built up their following based on their story. So yeah, if intertwining the brand into the story makes it more compelling, almost makes it more authentic.
Exactly. It is all about authenticity, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. So how would you go about, you're a B2B tech company, and how would you go about approaching finding that influencer that can help you? And what would the initial start point look like in terms of conversations?
I think B2B tech companies are also serving some functions within the B2Bs that they're serving, the other businesses that they're serving. So are they serving HR, finance, marketing, sales, etc.? So that's a good filter to start with. Then you can try to figure out, okay, so what are these guys inspired by? What is finance inspired by? And then you can say, oh, okay, so this influencer can. And it's the same logic that gets HR to get inspirational people to talk, to be speakers, because that is going to actually inspire a bunch of people. So if I look at influencer management, it has to be based upon which tribe am I trying to sell to, and which function within that tribe, and who's the influencer who's going to actually make an impact over there.
Yeah. And with influencers, we talked yesterday about existing customers, new users. Did you feel that the role of the influencer is also to enhance the brand's reputation with its current users, customers, clients? Or is it just simply there to attract new eyeballs?
I think it can influencers can be used in a bunch of ways. Normally, they're used mid funnel to increase engagement and to increase likability, shareability, etc., rather than the top of the funnel or at the bottom of the funnel. But it again depends upon the product life cycle, what business you're in, what sector you're in. There's so many factors, right?
Yeah. I mean, Trace, going to the events side of things, we used to use a lot of people to push out registration offers. So then I'd like put my offer in, and effectively they were influencers. So in that end, they were there, literally giving the code out, getting people to sign up. So it was a great way at the bottom of the funnel to actually convert, because that influencer is turned on by that event brand and he thinks you should go too.
Exactly.
I think that's an example of where, having that influencer push the client user over the edge to sign up.
Yeah, and just as a sidebar, this is a really interesting book that I'm reading. This one, this is written by a guy called Byron Sharp, and he's got some really amazing views on how markets grow. And he believes that one of the best ways to retain your existing customers is to get new ones, because it's so weird. It's completely contrarian. But what he says is that once you start getting new customers in, your existing customers have a habitual pattern of being with you for a while, and they are not going to switch so fast. So the way to get market share is probably to keep focusing on the new ones, which will act as a reinforcement for the existing ones as well. So it's a very radical new take. Of course, there are many controversies around it, but it's got to.
Well, I think a lot of brands follow that. You only got to look at Sky TV, for instance. All the offers are always for new customers. Never is it for existing customers, but it might be for those looking to leave. But the ones who are the most loyal, just you pay. Yeah, you're paying the bread and butter. We're not going to give you any deals because you're sold already. And
exactly.
You like us and you use us. So yeah, I mean, with talk of tribes, users, I think we look to try and build communities where possible. And do you think that communities really are the future of brand building?
Yeah, no, I genuinely think that communities are linked to culture and cults. And I think brand building, like we spoke yesterday, is all about culture building. And so therefore, I think brand building is deeply connected to communities. But I think that the core aspect of community building, and we both of us have delved in it in various ways in our past, But I think communities are really critical, because if you try and start a LinkedIn group, maybe today on LinkedIn, it could work. But 5 or 10 years ago, it wasn't working, because everyone was trying to sell to the other person. Like if you join them, everyone's trying to sell to it. And it's not going to work, is it? Because then that is not a community, it's just a network. And therefore, community is all about a sense of belonging, which is emotional.
Yeah.
So there's a opportunity, but there's also a sense of belonging, and both of them have to go hand in hand. And I think that we need to be really cognizant of the kind of communities that we are trying to be part of.
Yeah, I think that there's been a natural evolution with communities, especially on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn 10 years ago was very functional. It was finding new clients, finding new jobs, and looking at a bit of content. But now it's more about keeping connected with your community. If someone puts a post up, it may be someone that you dealt with 10 years ago and in a sector you're no longer active in. But you'd still give them a thumbs up and say, yep, good work, keep it going. So I do think that the community is really building on LinkedIn for professionals, and recruiters obviously use it as their main port of call still. But, I think it's a place to find a community, and that sort of goes to my next point. If you are in a position where you're thinking, right, I'm laying out the marketing plan, the campaigns for our new product, our new brand, whatever it is, what route should you take? Should you join other established communities, or should your efforts go into actually building your own?
It's interesting because Nike, for example, just took over an existing community of runners. They said, hey, we don't want to start a new community, and you don't need to wear Nike shoes. You can wear Adidas shoes and do what you want, but we just want to support you, and we love running, etc. And that got instant buy-in from an existing community. And now today, that community is known as Nike Run. So it's really interesting as to how the hijack happened over here. And I think that there needs to be a way in which you can go and join other communities, because that is lower entry barriers. But of course, you've got to get through the community managers over there, because they're really going to be careful. And I think that you need to behave yourself quite a bit before you actually do anything crazy. So I think it's always a combination. The most critical thing about building your own community is that you own your data. So the world is going to a place wherein we are finding it more and more difficult to get to have cookies, or to actually get the data from people. So you have to own first party or even zero party data, which essentially means that you need to own your communities. You need to own your communities because they then have a very deep connect with you, and they have the ability to actually, give of themselves. And therefore, the term permission marketing, which Seth Godin had started, is actually coming to fruition now.
Yeah, I would ask you now, how do you own the data? But actually, we'll leave that for another time. And anyone watching, if you want to find out, please feel free to get in contact with us. So is there anything else that you think that, when we're talking about what is there anything we're missing in terms of giving the bigger picture?
Yeah, and so we were talking of platforms having being looked upon as brands, and every platform has a life cycle of its own. And I think that we get disproportionate attention by looking at platforms which are just emerging, like Threads, maybe, or whatever. May not be a good example, but Clubhouse and Threads. And you need to be really trying out these new platforms wherein you're going to get disproportionate value for your money or for your effort. And it should be certainly part of the mix.
Yeah. And do you feel that across each platform, you've got to dress your content differently? Like with, say, cricket, you can wear whites for test match cricket, but one day internationals, put your pajamas on. Do we have to dress the content differently for each different platform to actually get the sort of response we need? Or can we just go, right, that's what the message I'm trying to put out, and bang it across all the platforms?
Now, this is a really interesting topic, and you're opening up a whole can of worms, which we should continue in when we talk about content building. But I'll just give a little bit of a taster. And the taster is this. The taster is that if I look at dressing up existing content for different platforms, I think that's still the conventional way of doing things. If I actually accept that the person on LinkedIn is not the person on Instagram, then you'll need to go like zero-based budgeting. You have to start from zero and you have to say, okay, this person is new. You might have some commonality, but that's different. So then you're looking at content creation from a very different perspective. And the reason why I think it's a very tricky one is because we know that by being consistent, we are creating a signal through our content. But we know that the customer is inconsistent. So how the hell are you going to create that signal which is consistent to a person who's inconsistent?
Yeah.
And that's a big challenge. And it's different for different brands. But this is where maybe integrated marketing communications is kind of having a lot of question marks for itself nowadays.
Yeah. I'm just thinking really about how the users view the content through different platforms. When you go on to LinkedIn and you see a post which actually that everyone's eyeballs should be on Facebook, and it's there, it sort of like sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, do you feel that sort of is the same for businesses and brands across the different networks? Is it a slightly different language they've got to speak, slightly different way of presenting themselves?
I think the answer is it's a mixture of everything, to be honest. I mean, you need original content for each platform. You need repurposed content that can go across platforms. And the balance is dependent on the brand and its objectives and sector.
Well, so obviously because we are covering where I felt we should sort of cross that sort of subject to, when in Rome and, when in YouTube.
Yeah. Well, the example that you gave was really interesting because it was about cricket. Now, yes, you can change the clothing, but if you're going to have the same test players play a T20, you're going to lose.
Yeah. Like that one. Why do we always take it back to cricket, eh? An Englishman and an Indian.
Of course.
And right. So for anyone who's going to go away and wants to talk about this video, tell them what they should be telling other people in a little bite-sized bit.
Just look at platforms as not your evil nemesis, but also look at how your customers are evolving and learn from the platforms how customers are behaving on that platform, which influences they're going for, which communities that they are going for, and how they change their behavior across all of this.
Excellent. Thank you, Sid. And we will obviously next be talking. We've done who, we've done why, we've done where. What's next?
Yeah. What?
All right. We will discuss what. Okay. Thanks, Rob, for watching, and we look forward to speaking to you again on the next one.
All right. Take it easy.